A house divided cannot stand. A government divided cannot stand. Now there's a very interesting problem. In my opinion, a deadly problem that can only end up in fatal consequences, that is clearly emerging, clearly coming out of the current UDA Kenya Kwanza regime. Now I'm aware that to some UDA sycophants, the UDA High Command knows exactly what it is doing. They may even want to call it high-tech politics. But of course, to anybody who understands the basics of governance, the basics of politics, there is nothing like that. Instead, these are the very clear symptoms of something that is imploding, coming down. And there are multiple examples. But let me just give you one that really stands out and also clearly illustrates where I'm going with this one. And on the surface of things, just looking at the events, it can get pretty confusing. Now, Rashid Echesa, former sports cabinet secretary, is a firm supporter of William Samoei Ruto. He is a firm supporter of the UDA government. Indeed, not too long ago, he got a state appointment. So there's no argument about that. And so, it is more than puzzling that recently, Bwana Echesa was kidnapped by what appeared to be state agents. But there's also something else that happened to Bwana Echesa. He was arraigned in court, charged with extortion, clearly proving that his woes were coming from the state, the same government he has fully supported all along, the same government led by the man whom Echesa has stuck with through thick and thin for a very long time. Now, I urge you not to make the mistake of thinking that Bwana Echesa is a small man. No. He has been playing in the super leagues of Kenyan politics for some time now. This man is no pushover. Sample the following. And only people who have been following our politics, and though our politicians behave for a long time, will fully understand what I'm about to tell you. As these charges against Bwana Echesa were unfolding, he fell ill and was hospitalized. If you are sick and hospitalized, obviously you cannot attend court proceedings. Indeed, it is the only viable legal reason why somebody who has been charged can fail to show up in court. And even more interesting, this Echesa case, the state versus Echesa, the complainant was an ODM governor, the governor of Kakamega, a man called Ferdinand Barasa. Now hold on a minute. How can that be? Somebody who has always been close to Ruto is arraigned in court, and the complainant is a governor of the Orange Democratic Movement, ODM, the opposition. What? How now? Now hold on to your horses as we continue to break this down. Now the latest is that Bwana Echesa has a kind of homecoming, Thanksgiving celebration after he recovered from his illness, and he takes that opportunity to spill the beans. Now remember, we've already said Echesa is not in the small league. Okay? Because even before that, even before he spills the beans, there were videos that were circulating on social media showing somebody who very closely resembled Rashid Echesa, somebody who was most probably him, in handcuffs in a forest. And so in his speech at this homecoming celebration of his recovery, whatever, Echesa tells Kenyans that he was falsely accused and that the man responsible for all his troubles is not in UDA, but the ODM governor, Ferdinand Barasa. He even describes in great detail what happened when he was handcuffed and taken to a forest and had to beg for his life. And not only that, he mentions the name of close aide of President Ruto, Farouk Kibet. And all this time he's talking, it is clear that Bwana Rashid Echesa is a very bitter man. What? What's really going on here? Rashid Echesa, a man of UDA, in fact a man who is very close to President Ruto, is accusing other UDA people, close aide, very loyal man to Ruto, Farouk Kibet, and is also accusing somebody who is currently cooperating with UDA, although they were elected into office on an ODM ticket, the Kakamega governor, Bwana Barasa. Isn't this very clearly a case of UDA fighting against UDA? Bang inside government. Now, to fully understand what is going on here, let us back up a little. President Ruto recently made a very publicized visit to Kakamega County and even went into the house, the residence of the Kakamega governor, Bwana Barasa. And this was around the time when some very crazy videos had started circulating on social media showing the Kakamega governor in a very compromising situation. And in the photos, there was what appeared to be a mganga, treating, in quotes, Barasa. And of course, when you're treated by a mganga, for those who don't know, in many instances, you need to be the way you were born. Uchi vile uliingia kwa hii dunia. And this is a whole governor. And so, it is not too difficult to fill in the gaps and guess with accuracy what really happened in Kakamega. Because when you really think about this problem Barasa had very deeply, you will realize only one man in the whole of Kenya was capable of assisting him. Why? Because it appears all his wars, the wars of Bwana Barasa, were being caused by persons who were close to the UDA government. And therefore Raila could not help him. The courts could not help him. Nobody else was capable of helping him except the leader of the government. That should be clear. Now, I believe most of us know that if you approach the UDA leader and you have a problem, that problem will be assigned to one of his aides. And let us be very specific. It will almost always be assigned to a man called Farouk Kibet. Now I hope we are following. I will go into the politics. The devastatingly shocking politics a little later, after we're through with this very dramatic story. So please stay with me. And so now we know that Kshs has come out and told us the role that Farouk Kibet played in his troubles, or is it his nightmare? He has told us that in great detail. Kshs also blames somebody he considers to have been his close friend for a long time, Ferdinand Barasa. You know, we have a problem in Kenya. Indeed, in most of the world, we have a problem bang in the middle of this information age. There is so much information flying at us, from social media, from news sites, from TV news, from radio talk shows, etc., etc. Too much information. And so the problem these days is being able to put together that information and link it so that we understand things better. Events can even take place on the same day, even within the same hour. But if one is unable to link them, then it becomes that much more difficult to understand something else that draws our attention, that concerns us. That would be much clearer if we're able to link recent events. And in fact, it is even better if we're able to link that disturbing event to things that have happened over the last 3, 4, or even 5 years. It is very important. But you'll appreciate it is a very difficult task. Why? Because there's too much information flying at us. Too much. And indeed it is overwhelming, because when you add our other information within our personal space, within our professional space, that is flying at us all the time, it is impossible to put things together. Most of the time, for most of the people. But for now, allow me to take you back to a very dramatic, very crazy story that unfolded in our country in the year 2020, when some mind-blowing allegations emerged. I am sure most of us remember the infamous General Juma. Now, we've just talked about too much information flying at us as locals, people living in Kenya, people affected and very interested in Kenyan politics. So imagine the situation where a foreigner is trying to get a contract with our Department of Defense to supply some military staff. And so the story goes that this businessman from Poland, Warsaw, wanted to get a contract to supply some military staff to our Defense Department. And they had already coughed out, shall we call it, facilitation fees, which were amounting to about 50 million Kenyan shillings. It is obvious that this foreigner was being conned and maybe started getting impatient, because 50 million is a lot of mandazi money. You'll agree with me. And so a meeting was arranged to visit, wait for this one, the office of the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. To do what? To discuss the finer details of this so-called defense contract and most probably to allay the fears and the nervousness of this Polish entrepreneur. And this is where this fictitious General Juma comes into the story, because he accompanied this Polish businessman together with Bwana Echesa and others, not only into the office of the deputy president then, this was the year 2020, but also to his boardroom. Now, let us be clear. You cannot access the boardroom of such a senior government official without the assistance, at the very least, of somebody who is very powerful or somebody who is very close to the said government official. That should be rather obvious. Now you know the rest of the details in these mind-blowing allegations. Indeed, the case is still in court, and therefore I am very limited as to what I can say. But be as it may, Bwana Echesa is a suspect in that particular case. And it is widely believed that the person Echesa was talking to at the office of the then deputy president is a man called Farouk Kibet. What? Now, of course, in 2020, Deputy President William Ruto then had fallen out with his boss, President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, and therefore was not really powerful enough to organize such a high-profile contract with our Department of Defense. And it appears that this Polish entrepreneur looking for this tender did not have this information, did not do their due diligence on the ground to understand those small but very important details, which would have greatly assisted him in saving his 50 million Kenyan shillings. Now back to the present. It should be very obvious that there is no way you can pull off these kidnappings, get people handcuffed, take them to places, and get away with it without very powerful people within government facilitating the same. That is more than obvious. And so this gives us a glimpse into how the current government operates. It gives us a very clear glimpse into how things are done by this current UDA Kenya Kwanza government. And it is very, very scary. Indeed, it confirms what many Kenyans are calling this government serikali ya majambazi. I believe that comes out very, very clearly. Now, when you decide to do things like this, there are very many problems you create. Okay? And some of them include, tomorrow, somebody else deciding, with no links to the state, somebody else deciding to do the same, and then posing as state agents and causing a lot of damage. The other problem, the much more obvious one, is that you cannot run a government like this and expect to succeed for very long. There is no way. Because what you're actually doing is that you're cutting your own feet. You're trying to run somewhere, but as you run, what you're doing is you're cutting off your own feet. How do you expect to continue moving forward? Hey, there's no way. How so? Well, just imagine if you're within UDA and you're a very close supporter of Kenya Kwanza and UDA. How would you react to developments like this, you would be terrified. You would quite rightly conclude that today it is so and so, yesterday it was the other person, tomorrow there is a very high likelihood that it could be me. As I play my politics within UDA in support of the government, something can change and then I end up on the wrong side. And yet I'm a firm supporter of the government. That, my friends, is the crux of this very serious problem. Because what keeps a government in power is very strong support from powerful people within that government. If those powerful people within that government start getting nervous, start getting scared, worried, then survival instinct will kick in, which will cause them to be very cautious about everything they do. And now you have a situation where your government support is already very thin, and then your main supporters, powerful people within the structure of government, are cautious. They are doing very little or nothing. They are waiting for confirmation and reconfirmation from the very top. It slows down everything, and it also opens the door for possible betrayal. And the way that happens is very simple. You ask yourself, for how long can I continue living like this, constantly in fear? This one has to end. And therefore you get an opportunity to secretly give information to the other side, to secretly do something that will damage this government you're a part of. Because simple logic, the more you weaken this monster government that terrifies you, the less scared, the less terrified you'll be going forward. And we have already seen many examples of that happening in this very shaky administration of William Ruto. I guarantee you, for instance, that things would not have been going so well for the striking doctors if we had more enthusiastic supporters of government doing their thing. Things would not have gone so well for the striking doctors. And I'm saying they're going well because very shortly UDA's nightmare will unfold when others, like the opposition, politicians, and other people who are hurting from this government, others will join the doctors in their nationwide strike, which is the worst nightmare that any government can have, and which will be, in my opinion, the beginning of the end of the Ruto administration. And if you're still doubting that this fear within supporters of the government is causing them a lot of trouble, if you're still doubting about that, let me point you to the current situation where supporters of the government, most of them, have been very quiet. Have you noticed that? Characters who not too long ago would come out with both barrels of their two guns firing non-stop in support of the government are now quiet. They will release one statement. They will say something once in a while, mainly for the purposes of reminding everybody whose side they are on. But then after that, they will go quiet. They'll even be quiet at the most critical moments, when the tide would have easily changed, when there's an opportunity to turn the tide in favor of the government. So it is already happening, and it continues to happen. And for those of us who want to look at things deeper, what is happening currently in Kenya is yet more confirmation that we're in the season of exposure. Exposure usually comes with something called judgment. Because in the Barasa case, have you noticed? In the Barasa case, nobody is denying that somebody went to see a witch doctor. Digest that for a minute. Yes, we know politicians do that all the time. But this is a clear case, clear evidence. And nobody is denying that it happened. Yeah, the only issue here is that people are pursuing a case involving blackmail. And the case involving blackmail is based on this event that must have taken place. Because you cannot have a case, because you cannot sustain your blackmail case on air. It has to be based on something that happened. And it is based on a governor consulting a witch doctor, and then somebody using that encounter for blackmail purposes. Now, I know there are so many shocking things which happen all the time in Kenya these days that it is easy to develop a thick skin. Something crazy happens and then you say, oh, okay. It doesn't shock you anymore because you have seen too many shocking developments. But the truth is, that one remains mind-blowing. A politician visiting a mganga, and there is photographic evidence that it happened. And this photographic evidence even has the date. So we can link it to events that were unfolding at the particular time when this photograph was taken. Yeah. And then Rashid Echesa comes out and tells us how Farouk Kibet operates, ordering for people wapelekwe kwa msitu na watishwe maisha yao. Hey. Yes, it is definitely the season of exposure. And never forget that all this information, all this exposure is slowly, very slowly, but gradually weakening a government that is already too weak for comfort. Now the window of opportunity is rapidly shutting for you to grab my highly sensitive special report that will give you even more exposure. A lot of sensitive information is in this special report that will help you to understand even deeper the contents of this video that you've just taken in. Because if you think that you're one of the few people who know, who realize that this government is collapsing, it's going down, then you need to think again. Because there are politicians, ambitious politicians, who are already positioning themselves, doing a number of things to ensure that after the chaos, they will emerge on top, or at least they will emerge in a much better position than where they are right now. And that is normal in politics. So for only Kenya shillings 3,999, you can have this amazing, highly sensitive special report in your inbox, or $31. And not only that, you will also be able to receive my 2 previous highly sensitive special reports, and one of them talks very deeply about how the current presidency operates. Very shocking information. I highly recommend that you go for it, because I'm very sure this offer will have ended in the next 48 hours. No extensions, I am very sure. So please rush and take full advantage of this golden opportunity. Until next time, this is Chris Kumekucha.